Perspire versus desire. There's a story of the U.S. soldier who was stationed on a remote Pacific island in the South Pacific during World War II. After a few weeks, the lonely soldier wrote home to his wife, telling her that there was nothing to do on the island, how much he missed her and how lonely he was, and that the island was inhabited mainly by beautiful young women, all the island men having gone off to fight the war. A couple of weeks went by, and the lonely young soldier received a package in the mail. Inside was a harmonica and a book of instructions, and a letter from his wife telling him that he should fill his empty, lonely time by learning to play the harmonica. Okay, for now we're going to leave that lonely, bored GI on the island with the beautiful women, but I promise we'll come back to him. From the tropical islands of the Pacific, we now travel to, drum roll, drum roll, drum roll. There we go. South Central Texas. There we go. Thank you. No rim shots, though. Okay. My dad had a field that was a pretty good-sized field. It had been cleared of brush, and it looked really good. And he fertilized it and planted grass, and it looked really, really good. And things were well for a long time. But then after a few years, besides the grass growing, there were also little weesatch trees and little mesquite trees. Well, knowing that little mesquite trees and little weesatch trees grow up into big mesquite trees and big weesatch trees, he decided that he was going to do something about it. Now, my father had a built-in brush control system, his 4 sons, which means he also had built-in cattle feeders, hay haulers, tomato and watermelon planters and harvesters, fence builders, truck drivers, etc., us 4 boys. Now, you can't just mow mesquite and weesatch and think you've killed them. Mesquite didn't get to be the scourge of South Texas ranchers by being weak and dumb. If you mow mesquite, it comes back instead of a straight up, it comes back spread out in all directions close to the ground, making it a real nuisance. So Dad had all of us walk through that field carrying 5-gallon buckets, 1 in each hand, filled with diesel fuel, and a small little empty tomato paste can, and a roll of bathroom tissue on a little slat in our back pocket. So we'd walk along and we'd come to a mesquite tree and set the buckets down and dip the tomato can in there and fill it with diesel and then pour it around the base of the mesquite tree. Then we'd tear off a square of the bathroom tissue and put it on the thorns so that we would know which tree that had been treated. And then we'd go on to the next mesquite, and believe me, there were a lot of them. So guess what time of year is best for poisoning mesquite? You got it, summer, the very heat of Texas summer. And of course, you're hot and miserable and sweaty, and you got diesel fuel all over you. It was not a pleasant experience in all that heat. But we were young and strong, and we didn't mind, and it was a very effective way to kill mesquite trees. A lot of work, but very effective. And the pasture was soon free of mesquite. Years passed, and the pasture was passed down to one of the sons who didn't really have the time to take care of it. The mesquite and the weesatch eventually came back with a vengeance, and eventually became so numerous and so big that they had to be bulldozed out, an expensive operation that could have been avoided. Now, to help you understand the importance of this story, let's listen in as Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. He tells them a parable. He says, when an evil spirit comes out of a man, it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. Then it says, I will return to the house I left. And when it arrives, it finds the house unoccupied, swept clean and put in order. Then it goes and takes with it 7 other spirits more wicked than the first. And they go in there and live there, and the final condition of the man is worse than the first. That is how it will be with this wicked generation. So what does mesquite and huisache have to do with this eerie little parable about a haunted house we just read? Quite frankly, everything. First of all, the evil spirit was banished from the man, not destroyed. What this means is this, that until Christ comes again, evil can be conquered, it can be driven away and pushed back, but it cannot be destroyed yet. Evil is always looking for an opportunity to counterattack and regain the ground that it lost. It wants revenge for you having kicked it out. Evil is a force which you can put at bay, but it's never eliminated. It's always out there waiting for an opportunity to attack you, looking for any opening it can find, any weakness or any weak moment. Much like the unwanted mesquite that kept coming back if you quit working at it and ignored it and trying to get rid of it. If you just forget evil is there and think you're done with it, it will come back stronger than ever. The Bible says, be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. You really need to be aware that the devil wants to destroy you. He hates you. Even though he acts like you're his friend, he hates you and he wants to destroy you. Believe it. Believe also that God gave us the capability and the power to keep Satan at bay, to defeat him. James, who was the brother of John, said, turn your back on the devil and he will flee. It's very true, but the hard part is turning your back on the devil. He can sometimes speak so sweetly and so enticingly, and it sounds so good to do what he says will be so good. Don't listen to him. It's a trap. Secondly, this parable illustrates the fact that a negative religion can never be enough. A religion that consists entirely in thou shalt nots will end in failure. The trouble is that it may be able to cleanse a man by prohibiting all the evil actions, but it can't keep him cleansed. Something must fill the void that was left by the cleansing. That something is God's love, and God's love in action. Any teaching which stops at telling a man that what he must not do is bound to be a failure. It must go on to tell him what he must do. An alcoholic may be in recovery. He may have sworn off the bottle and going to bars, but he must find something else to do. He must find something else to fill up that empty time, or he'll just slip back into his old behavior pattern. Someone whose constant pursuit is pleasure may decide that he must stop, but he must find something else to do to fill up that time, or he'll simply, through the very emptiness of his life, drift back to his old pursuits. A man's life must not only be swept clean of evil, it must be filled up with good. You know, Satan always finds some mischief for idle hands to do. Now, parents, take note of this. If your children have lots of idle time on their hands, they will get into trouble. Don't ask me how I know. Kids in the inner city have time on their hands, and look at the results. Gangs and violence and hatred. If you took those same kids and took them into South Central Texas and gave them something to do like killing huisache and mesquite, they would feel productive and proud of what they had done. Most of those kids are good kids. They just have too much time on their hands and too little love in their homes. Now, we knew Dad and Mother would find some work for us to do if they saw us doing nothing. We'd better be reading a book or working on a hobby or doing homework or working around the house. They knew we would get into trouble with idle time. And you had better not say that you were bored. The same principle applies to adults. An idle mind is really the devil's workshop here. Sitting around the house with nothing to do is just like pulling the tail of a dragon. Sooner or later, that dragon's going to bite you. Depression can set in. You can start hitting the bottle, or your mind can drift to things that it really shouldn't, like those horrible websites that are available on every computer. You need to fill your empty time with God, with godly thoughts and with something useful and good, whether it's a hobby or reading or cooking or helping others or sports or whatever, working jigsaw puzzles, crosswords. If you've banished one thing from your life, something else must be substituted for it. For life cannot remain empty. Otherwise, it's an open invitation to the devil. So fill your empty time with good things and don't leave yourself time to let evil creep in. The man who banished the devil in this parable left the space empty where the devil had been. He didn't fill it with something useful, and the devil came back with 7 other worse things to fill that unoccupied space. This means that though you may have given up something bad, if you don't fill your life with something good, you may wind up doing something that was worse than the thing that you gave up. Every gardener knows that the easiest way to keep your garden weed-free is to plant productive plants and to keep them healthy and alive. So, let's return to our lonely, bored GI on the Pacific Island with all the beautiful, lonely women around. 2 years went by and the war ended and the young soldier returned home. There was his wife, waiting to greet him as he came down the ship's gangplank. He rushed up to her with open arms, expecting hugs and kisses, and she stopped him, holding up her arms. She said, "Just a minute. First of all, let's see how well you play that harmonica." People who have accepted Christ have decided to give up any evil in their lives, and we need to fill that spot in their lives where the evil was with something godly. That's one reason why it's so important when someone finds Christ for the first time and joins a church, or some new person joins a church, that they be given something to do in the church. It makes you feel like you're giving something back to God. It makes you feel useful. You feel good because you're doing something for somebody else besides yourself, and it fills up any idle time that may tempt you into doing something that you really shouldn't. Now, all of us, when we were younger, and you people that are younger, you know that temptation beckons to you softly and sweetly, and it's hard to turn your back. And if you turn your back, you need to fill it up with something useful. As we grow older and wiser, that emptiness can still be there as the house maybe becomes empty and you're the only person in it. You're faced with a lot of empty time. It's important that you fill it up with something. God has a plan for you, and you're never too old to be doing something for God. So find something. Find something godly to do with that time. Our aim is not just the absence of evil action, but the positive presence of work for Christ. If we're finding the temptations of evil very threatening, one of the best ways to conquer those temptations is to plunge into activity for God and for our fellow men. Now, it's true that you must work hard to do this. You must perspire, that is, work hard in order to banish evil or desire. You got to fight like that guy up there on the slide. You know, that's perspire on the left, and you got to work hard to beat down the devil, to keep him out of your life, to keep yourself godly. It's seldom easy. It's often very hard because, as I mentioned, the devil wants you to think he's your friend. He's going to take care of you. But it's all a mental battle. You don't have to be a giant to whip the devil. You don't have to work out with weights every day. You don't have to be in top shape. All you have to do is be able to win the mental battle. That's where it occurs. That's where the battle is won or lost. And you can win if you're determined. We replace evil with good, desire with perspire. That is, doing something. I had to work hard, that is, perspire, to get rid of that pesky mesquite. They wouldn't go away by themselves. They would only grow stronger and larger if I did nothing. We must all work hard, perspire, if you will, to banish evil from our lives, or it will only grow stronger and larger. It won't go away on its own. Fill your idle time with God. Fill your idle time with godly things. Make the conscious effort to banish evil from your lives and replace it with something good. This is important because you need to keep in mind that one day, when we come running up to God with our arms wide open and want a hug from God and to be welcomed into His kingdom, before God lets us into heaven, He's going to hold up His hand and say, first of all, let's see how well you play that harmonica. May God bless this message to each of you.